Good evening, everybody. I'm Local 4 News anchor Kimberly Gill. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our special town hall meeting discussing chronic absenteeism here at Mumford High School. Tonight, we'll take an in-depth look at chronic absenteeism and the effect it can have on student achievement. DPSCD is doing a lot to combat this problem. And tonight we have Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti. He is here to talk about some of the attendance challenges that he's seeing in Detroit, not just in Detroit, but also across the nation. Then we'll speak with a few school leaders and staff committed to reversing the rise in chronic absenteeism. We'll take questions from parents and audience members as well as the night goes forward. So let's go ahead and jump right in and ask some questions, starting with Superintendent Dr. Nikolai Vitti. Thank you so much for being with us and doing this.
Well, thank you for you doing this. I think when we think about getting out of the pandemic, our greatest issue right now is consistent attendance.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, at the September board meeting, you presented some data that basically said 95% of students that attend school 95% of the time do better than students that don't. That's pretty obvious. But talk about the impact that this has on the district in terms of making progress, especially as we move out of the pandemic and into a more normal life as we knew it before the pandemic.
Yeah, it's almost common sense when you think about it. The more students attend school, the better they'll do academically. But this year, we're trying to say that more because we know that we have to improve student achievement in DPSCD. The most important thing that we can do is make sure that students are at and above grade level in literacy and math and college ready or work ready when they graduate from high school. But our data is clear that when students, for example, miss less than 9 days of school, they're 4 to 5 times more likely to be at and above grade level. Likewise, when they're chronically absent, they miss more than 18 days. The percentage of those students that are at and above grade level are single digits. So it's important for students to be at school every day only to build relationships with their teachers and students, but it has a predominant, significant impact on achievement. And again, at the end of the day, we want our children to be at and above grade level. We know they're capable, but when they miss school, they miss assignments, they miss information, and most information builds on other information when it comes to school. So a student can get frustrated, they can get behind, it can lead to behavioral issues, and it can actually lead to mental health challenges because then you're struggling in school and staying far behind. So this year in particular, we just have to get the word out, and I think this forum, this town hall allows that to happen. And we just have to create better awareness that it's all right to take a day off here or there, but after a while it can affect student achievement.
And just so everybody's on the same page, what does it mean to be chronically absent? What number of days is that?
So chronically absent is defined by the state of Michigan, and that means missing 18 or more days of school. So that's excused or unexcused, it's just 18 days. So sometimes, excused absence can be going to the doctor, going to a funeral. And that can be helpful for time to make up assignments, to make up a quiz or a test. But at the end of the day, you're absent, and those days can accumulate. So often, we have parent sessions every month, different times, and parents will say, well, my child only misses 1 day a week. Well, it adds up. They're there 4 out of 5 days. Or, well, my child might miss once every 2 weeks. You can imagine in a typical school calendar, those days accumulate and it leads to the 18 or more days. The pandemic certainly exacerbated attendance. Especially in Detroit, we saw a disproportionate negative impact of COVID on our families, not only through death, but through hospitalization, fear. That disrupted coming to school, led to online learning. Online learning was frustrating for families, for students. And it almost became more normal or acceptable not to go to school, not to log in, because the accountability wasn't the same and people were more lenient and understanding. So we've created some bad habits, which are understandable, but we have to turn the corner and get back to coming to school every day or certainly more frequently.
Yeah. So chronic absenteeism is a little different than truancy. Talk about the difference, because I'm not sure that people even understand that there is a difference.
Yeah, when we get into the nuances between the two, we're really starting to move into greater accountability for families when we're talking about truancy. And I think part of the conversation is to create greater awareness, but it's also to create more accountability for families. And we're not interested in trying to put families in jail or taking children out of homes, But when we move into extreme numbers, you know, in the 20s, 30 days absent with no commitment to send the child to school, I think we move more into a truancy situation, and one where we are considering getting social services involved, maybe police involved if it's excessive.
Yeah.
And that's when you start thinking about the difference between chronic absenteeism and truancy.
Right. And with truancy, a lot of times too, maybe it's kids who are skipping school on purpose. Chronic absenteeism, sometimes it's the resources that kids and families don't have in order to be able to be successful, or even sometimes the transportation, for instance, to get to school.
And just skipping school on a day-to-day basis, even when families don't know. So, you know, a parent might leave really early for work or even be on the night shift and not get in, thinking child goes to school but doesn't, and they're truant because of the actual day of school. Family thinks they go to school, but they don't. We've created better accountability systems and really tools for families to monitor attendance. So you can now log in, it's called Power School, and you can see whether a child is present daily and if they're present in their each period.
Class.
So that's a better way to have a communication with children and call teachers about, wait, I know I sent my child to school.
Right.
Why weren't they there in first period? Or see a trend of that not happening. And then, you know, there could be bus issues with the city bus or the traditional yellow school buses, and those are all problem-solving opportunities to then reach out to the school or the district to see if those are challenges, or the child is just not getting out of bed or school, and the parent is working and not at home or has to go to work.
So tell us how the district is preparing to address the root causes of chronic absenteeism, and the root causes can be different for different families. Talk about that.
Well, chronic absenteeism is not new to Detroit. It's not new to formerly DPS or DPSCD. The pandemic has, like I said, exacerbated it. One of the main causes of absenteeism is the concentration of poverty. It's poverty. There are life issues that get in the way of families being able to send their children to school every day. So it might be a transportation issue for that family. It might be that the family has to move from one home to the other, which makes it harder to get to the school that the child was originally at. There are issues with eviction, with power being turned off. And so I think as a district, not only are we always sensitive to those issues, but we're starting to work more with the philanthropic community, with partners that offer those resources, and trying to empower our attendance agents, which we have at every school, to problem solve with the parent to understand what is causing the absenteeism and how can we connect you with the resources to overcome those issues. Whether it's a different bus line, whether it's help with overcoming evictions, moving, getting into a school that's closer to the child's home. And so that's what we've talked about with family resource centers, and adding that throughout the city with every neighborhood feeder pattern is where the neighborhood high school would be equipped directly with those things. But attendance agents would also have access to that resources to give the families to problem solve. But beyond that, in the system, I talked about data systems. So just better data systems to know what child is absent, when they're absent, what period, making sure teachers are taking better attendance, robocalls that go out, robo-text messages that go out to families, home visits that our attendance agents do to ask why a child is going to school. And also moving more to vans. So instead of the traditional yellow buses, one thing that I saw and that everyone sees that, Sunday morning you see these church vans going all around the city. So I remember seeing that and saying, well, why aren't we using more of that as a district? So we started to invest in more vans. The problem is with the microchips, it's hard to get those with the national supply chain issues with microchips and vans, but we put money aside to purchase vans because what our vision is long-term is that an attendance agent or maybe a bus driver that's done with their initial route will get in a van will be connected to an individual school, and then pick up children that didn't come to school initially, where there might be a transportation or a family issue to get that child to school. So those are the things that we're doing, and just more accountability on attendance. So whether it's my evaluation or principal evaluations, I'm talking about improvement for average daily attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism.
Yeah. As you said, chronic absenteeism isn't new for the district. Attendance agents are not new either.
No.
Before the pandemic, you had them.
Correct.
How's it going? And I know it probably is hard to judge because of the pandemic, there was, so many people, students doing virtual learning. How was it going before, and then how's it going now that, kids are back in school?
Yeah, so before the pandemic hit, so the last normal year that we had was 18-19, and it seems like that was so long ago. But in 18-19 was our first year of this team, the school board and my administration. 17-18 was our, based on year 18-19, our first year. Our first regular year before the pandemic, we improved average daily attendance by about 2 to 3 percentage points, and we reduced chronic absenteeism by 8 or 9 percentage points. So it can be done, and we did it. The pandemic hit, and it just disrupted the normal flow of attendance. So this past year, so this would have been the 21-22 school year, we improved average daily attendance versus the year before by a couple of percentage points, but chronic absenteeism actually increased last year compared to the year before that when we were mainly online. So far this year, our average daily attendance is about 84% district-wide, which is a vast improvement from last year and around the same numbers before the pandemic. The challenge is chronic absenteeism. So right now, if you look at students who have missed at least 3 or more days of school, we're already at about 55% of students in that area. So if the trend continues, our chronic absenteeism rate would be about 60-65%, which is still a little higher than we were before the pandemic. So the positive, on average, more students are coming to school on a consistent basis. The negative or the challenge is we still are seeing higher levels of chronic absenteeism. So individual students missing more days in more of the totality, the cumulative, than before even the pandemic.
Yeah. This is not just a school problem. It's a community problem. And what can the community do to help? I'm a Detroit girl. I live in the city. Sometimes I see kids that are out of school, and I wonder, they should be in school. But sometimes I don't know, should I say something? What do you do? What can the community be having meetings to talk about how we can help?
Well,
and if so, what does that look like?
Well, as I said in the opening, I just think that these kind of conversations can reach a larger audience than usually what the district can do. So I'm just thankful for you to even having the conversation, because I think someone either in this audience, but probably more importantly watching, will just have a different understanding of what it is to be chronically absent. Like I said, the idea of, I only miss 1 day a week or twice every 2 weeks, that accumulates. So one, awareness that come to school every day, and if you are going to miss school, let it be about doctor appointments, you're really sick, and if occasionally you're going to take a mental health day, which is understandable, it can't be consistent. It has to be once in a while, and try to stay under 9 days of being absent, if absolutely possible. That's still too much, but at least we're getting better. The other issue is if a child is consistently not wanting to go to school, I don't like my teacher. This one child is always picking on me. Then you got to move into problem solving to address the issue that's preventing the child from coming to school. And I would say, parents have to be the adult. And it's hard. But sometimes you have to drag your child out of bed and say, no, you are going to school. Or if there is a problem at school, let me come with you so we can talk to the teacher to problem solve to the issue. We have to increase also our expectations of children going to school more consistently. It just creates better habits, and we create more problems by continually not sending children to school. So I think the opportunity here is to create a higher level of expectation that children go to school every day, outside of really being sick, not feeling somewhat not, but really being sick, or large issues around, death in the family, have to go to a doctor, can't get an appointment any other day, and that we all share that. And then going back to your point about seeing a child not in school, then I think there's time to have difficult conversations, at least with the family members we know.
Right, right.
Sisters, brothers,
Sure,
uncles,
sure.
things like that.
Sometimes, at least for me, you feel like I want to say something, but then again, it's not my business, maybe.
Right.
But I think that a lot of that goes on. That you see kids and you're like, well, why aren't you in school?
At least with friends and family. I
Yeah,
would keep
but
it
with
friends
friends and family for sure, absolutely. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what's making headlines this week, and that's the dramatic dip in student test scores. Talk about some of the numbers and what DPSC is doing about those test scores. And this was 4th and 8th graders, right?
Right. So this is NAEP. So NAEP stands for the National Assessment for Educational Progress. It's the only national assessment that's conducted across the country. What districts do and schools do is really rely on state testing. So our state test acronym is called MSTEP, and all the 50 states have their own state test. This is a national test. It's not a typical test in that when we state test, all students take that test, at least from 3rd grade to 8th grade. This is a sample test, so it takes a random sample of students throughout the nation, mainly in public schools, some private schools, and you test 4th graders and 8th graders in reading and math, but only a sampling at some schools, and that sampling is supposed to represent the district. It's taken every 2 years, again, 4th and 8th grade. And so what this last administration of NAEP showed, and students took this test in February. So in our district, this was a month after online learning. So last year we were in person, but when the surge hit in January, our students were online, which really disrupted their learning. And then when they came back, they took this NAEP test in February. So what the NAEP results showed was that nationally, scores declined over the last 2 years because of the impact on the pandemic. So national tests declined, large urban school districts like DPSCD declined, and even public schools generally, even in the suburbs, showed decline. That's not new. So certainly we anticipated a decline. And I feel that over the last 6 years, we've created the systems and the processes. So what do I mean by that? Curriculum that's on grade level. We're nearly fully staffed with teachers. We once had 500 teacher vacancies. We have 20.
And
right
that's huge. That's a big deal that you have.
We have academic interventionists that work with students in small groups in reading and math at the elementary level. More professional development for our principals and our teachers. Data systems to track where students are and how to intervene. So in 18-19, before the pandemic hit, students took MSTEP, the state test, and we showed more improvement in at and above grade level performance than Michigan as an average, and improved in every grade level. On NAEP, 18-19, last time students tested before this administration, we had the highest improvement in 4th grade math than any other large urban school district in the country. So we know how to do this. The pandemic literally disrupted what we were doing. Now that we're back and not managing COVID the same way, I know at the end of this year, our state assessment scores will improve. And in 2 years, so 2024, I know our students will do better and show improvement. And that's what we've been saying as a district. It's going to be really hard to go, let's say, from 0 to 100. We're not at 0, but just to use a metaphor. But our commitment is showing improvement. And before the pandemic, we did that. Our state assessment scores this past year showed less learning loss in every grade level than the state of Michigan. So if you took all Michigan schools and looked at where they were before the pandemic to this past year, and you looked at our same scores, we showed less learning loss on average in the state of Michigan. And when you look at city charter schools, we also had less loss than city charter schools. So I believe and I know we can do this. We've done it. This year, we're going to hopefully be in person the whole year with very little disruption. And I know our students will do better on the state assessment. 2 years from now, 2024, I think we'll not only show improvement, but I'm rather confident that we'll probably be, once again, the most improved school district, large urban school district in the country in 2024 NAEP. It was just the disruption of learning, the chronic absenteeism that really impacted how we interact with children, and we put a lot of the weight and stress and responsibility of teaching and learning fell on families. because students were learning online, and we know all of our families are not equipped to teach children. And although teachers did their best online, it wasn't in-person learning. So dropping wasn't new. Now we just have to show improvement now that we're back.
Yeah. And that test, just to be clear, it's measures reading skills and math skills, or are those the only two areas?
Yeah, it's not actually skills. It's standards. It's national standards. It's testing national standards in fourth grade and eighth grade. It's not really, and we really could get into the weeds of this, it's not really a literacy test. And the same thing with the state assessment. So when we say, for example, in third grade, students are at or above grade level, we're really saying they're mastering literacy or English language arts standards in third grade. We shouldn't say that because a student doesn't get a at and above or grade level performance, they're illiterate. We shouldn't call any child illiterate. It angers me when we label children illiterate because they don't pass a certain test. It's not a literacy test. It's a state standards assessment. We should expect and want our children to be at and above grade level, but they're not illiterate because they don't get a certain score on that test. And the same thing applies to NAEP. It's not about literacy per se. It's about mastering the standards at that grade level.
Okay, so we are going to take some questions from audience members. I do want to remind people that this is about absenteeism tonight, so try to keep your questions focused on that if you do have questions, and we'd love to hear them. So the first one comes from Keith Johnson. Keith is a former president of DFT, and Keith's question says, we once got at-risk money called 31A, which, what is it? 31A, which afforded us the opportunity to hire wraparound staff, such as attendance agents, social workers, etc. Any chance of working with Lansing to get that support back?
Yeah, so it's not really a political plug, it's the reality. I think Governor Whitmer has done a nice job of increasing per pupil funding every year, working with the legislature to do that. I think she's also done a good job of incorporating more of a weighted student formula with funding. So that means looking at students that are more at risk. So students that are special education, so they have special services that they need because of their learning challenges, or English language learners, those newly arrived immigrant students. There's extra money now connected to those students, similar to how 31A was structured before Governor Whitmer. And so we have increased funding in order to provide more support for those students. What's really happening in our budget is it just frees general fund money to do other things where before it was going to special education children, because we have more than the average district throughout the country and across the state. But to answer the question directly, we have increased, for example, attendance agents throughout the school. We've also increased guidance counselors. We've increased social workers. And so that's what that money was geared to do, 31A. To get to a point where I think our students really need to be, as far as those support services, we have to move to a more aggressive weighted student formula.
Yeah.
So for example, special education is only about 80% funded by the state of Michigan. The other 20% comes out of our general fund. So we're literally robbing from Peter to pay Paul. So what we'd like to see is 100% of ESE or special education funding being reimbursed, so that we can use that 20% of money for special needs children or other at-risk children. And then we can, for example, hire more guidance counselors. Or like with COVID relief funding, which we got from the federal government, we offered mental health support in every school throughout the district, where students get one-on-one small group therapy or counseling based on an at-risk survey that they take, which also helps address attendance issues. Would agree, we need more of that funding. We've done our best with the money that we have, but to go even farther, we'll need not only an increase in per pupil funding, but equitable funding, which would be linked to giving more money for students that are greater at risk.
Speaking of this kind of money and budget, we know that you had Count Day a couple of weeks ago. Do we have any numbers of how that went yet?
Yeah, so we have a count month. Everyone talks about a count day, and that count day is important. But when we look at our current enrollment, we're probably at about, I would say, 48,600. give or take, which is an increase to spring, this past spring. It's an increase from last fall and the previous fall. So 3 years ago, again, before the pandemic, which was 1920, the pandemic hit in March 2020, we had our highest enrollment, and we were at about 51,000 students. The highest enrollment we've seen in 2 decades. What happened was a pandemic, and large urban school districts throughout the country lost anywhere from 5 to 10% of their students. We saw a much less of a drop because I think we did a really good job of giving students devices, internet access, but our home visits. We visited over 60,000 homes over the pandemic to make sure students either went to school in the learning centers, went to school in person, or logged in. Long story short, we saw an improvement in enrollment over the last really 3 counts, but not the same number we were at before the pandemic.
Okay.
So we're in a better position, but not an ideal situation. So at the end of this year, unless we see a dramatic increase in per pupil funding or move to equitable funding, we have serious inflation issues throughout the country, so cost of everything is going up, and we want to continue the things that we funded out of COVID funding, like mental health support, a nurse in every building. So we're going to have to make some hard budget decisions going into the next year, and we'll work with our school board to do that.
Okay, another question. It doesn't have a name, but it says, what is the report given by the truancy officers as to why the children are absent from school? So maybe this person is talking about the attendance agents.
Yeah, a lot of people call them by different names, but they're attendance agents. The role, and I think this is important to note, the district has always had attendance agents or truancy officers. Now, we increased the funding for attendance officers or attendance agents about 4 or 5 years ago. So we have one allocated to every school. Now, whether we can sustain this with the budget in the future, I don't know. That's something we're going to have to figure out. But their role has changed, where before they would do home visits, but they also did more accountability work with families that continually didn't send their children to school. Before I became superintendent, their role shifted to be more support to families than accountability. And so the conversation among attendance agents is that really they should be more balanced. It should be support and accountability. And I do think as we get farther behind the pandemic, we have to move to more accountability. But the attendance agent will visit the homes of children that are consistently absent and talk to families about why their children is missing school. And I think so. The question is, what are we hearing? Well, it goes back to what I said before. Sometimes it's, I had a car, I don't have a car anymore, and my child doesn't always have a consistent ride to school. Sometimes it's, my child's been sick, or he or she didn't feel like going to school. Sometimes it's we moved. And so it's life issues. And so that's what we have to be sensitive about, but we also have to recognize we're not helping children by not sending them to school consistently.
Yeah. Okay, this will be my last question from the audience for you. It says, is there any consideration to be innovative to solve the absentee problem? For example, offering Saturday makeup school for maybe kids that had to be absent.
That sounds great, but we have to get a teacher or teachers to come on Saturday. So, teachers are already burnt out through Monday through Friday. Sure. And we know that because we've had money to do after-school tutoring or after-school programs, and our teachers basically say, I can't do it. I got my own family, and I'm tired. I remember when I was a first-year teacher, second-year teacher in New York City, my wife and I were both teachers, and I remember I would get home and I would crash. I would be that tired. Yeah. There are challenges with being superintendent that are not the same challenge of teachers, but I would say the toll on your body and your mind in some ways day to day is harder as a teacher than it is even as a superintendent. And that just makes a whole idea of teachings on Saturday that much harder. So that's the challenge. We actually have funding to do that. The issue would be teachers coming. Now we can think about retired teachers, but then we get into scale. Like how many schools could we really populate? And some schools are offering Saturday school to just more tutorial work and academic support work, but it's one, children getting there, and then two, someone who's qualified to actually run the sessions.
Dr. Vitti, just in closing, is there anything that you just want to button up the conversation? I appreciate it. We'd like to.
No, I would just say it takes everyone. One thing that we're doing differently as a district is we measure 3 things that we think are really important for students. Them being loved, them being prepared, and them being challenged. And we do that through a survey that they take. They've been taking it every year now, since about the past 4 or 5 years. And we can look at that at individual classroom level, at the school level. And so when you look at those questions, they're the questions that you would expect we would be asking. Like, do you feel like someone really cares about you? Do you feel like this is hard and making you, think more and work harder in class? And I think if our schools, which I think they're more intentional about students feeling loved, challenged, and prepared, then we're doing our part to welcoming and embracing children coming to school every day. That's our responsibility. On the family side, it's problem solving through the things that are getting in the way of sending your child to school and creating the expectation that you are going to go to school every day unless there are extreme circumstances. And I would say, if there are extreme circumstances, let the school know. Don't be too proud about it, and let us help. There are things that we could do to help. It could be resources to avoid an eviction. It could be money for the power bill. It could be moving your child to a school where grandma lives, and that's where you have to go because you can't pay the rent anymore. And that's hard, that's challenging, but it focuses on the child.
Sure.
And I think, I just finished a parent session as I was walking in here, and the message was has to be a team approach. The school, the district has responsibilities, the family. Let's meet each other halfway or at some point down the road, even if we have to go farther, and let's work as a team. I think we all know what it's like to be on a team. The best teams that are successful all do their individual jobs well. They think about the greater whole, not themselves, and they problem solve through the challenges. They own the challenges to think about the outcome, and the outcome has to be children coming to school and learning at high levels. We all own that as a community, as a district, and we have to problem solve through the challenges that exist so that children can come to school every day.
Big round of applause for Dr. Nikolai Vitti. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So you can unmic. I want to turn our attention to the screen here. All month long, Local 4, we've been doing television news stories highlighting the issue of chronic absenteeism. Make sure you just unplug there. And this is a story that we did last week, and I just would like for you to take a look at it while our next panelists, if you guys would like to come on up while we start that.
When Janetta Burnett's daughter passed away, she immediately took over the care and custody of her daughter's 5 kids. Retired and on a fixed income, Janetta didn't know how she would make ends meet.
Right there, I ain't got nobody else, like no family member, nobody really helped me. But since they came, it's like family. They support me with the kids' uniform. I didn't have it. And I felt very blessed because when they came to me, they had nothing.
She's talking about the Family Resource Distribution Center. It's a place where DPSCD families can receive resources such as school supplies, coats, water, dry goods, and hygiene products for free.
It's been a struggle, a real struggle. But when you got support, that's a big help. It is. Sorry, I'm sorry. I get emotional. Sorry. Because I miss my daughter. And you got support and make it easier. When you don't, nobody, it's hard.
The Family Resource Distribution Center is one of the steps DPSCD is taking to reverse a rise in chronic absenteeism. Research from the district shows the reasons students miss class may have more to do with their families not having stable access to resources that will help get kids to school than not caring about attendance. The need was already great in Detroit and has been exacerbated by the pandemic.
Detroit is such a massive district. There is such a big need. If there wasn't a resource like this, I think it would be a lot harder because in my experience as a social worker, I've had to send families here and there and every which place to get the things that they need, whether it's food or clothing or even emergency support after some sort of something terrible happens. And a lot of times it's very inconvenient. A lot of times they might have to go out of their way when transportation might be limited, things like that. So this is a great resource.
Huge.
bigger than we really can see, because although we think it's hundreds and thousands of students that need help, a lot of them don't tell us, so we don't know if they need them or not. Even if we go to their houses, some of them won't admit that they need the help. So we don't know exactly what number it is, because we only know the people that we help.
Tennille Allen is a single mother of 2 and said she put her pride aside to help her family. She says it was the best thing she could do.
It's not even a hassle doing it. It wasn't like I had to fill out a whole bunch of information and, give them my life story and everything. I just ran across the resource. They found out I can use it, I needed it, and they told me to come on in. That's what I did, and I'm able to do it every month or as needed.
Yeah, and that was a story that we aired a couple of weeks ago on Local 4. So let's move into our panel discussion right now. Joining us is Shalonda Buckman. She's the Assistant Superintendent of Family and Community Engagement, and we've had interviews on Local 4 this month featuring the resources that she and her team oversees, and the Resource Center is one of those locations. Effie Harris is an attendance agent at Gumpers Elementary School. Alicia Merriweather is Deputy Superintendent. She oversees the attendance agents and their work. And then down at the end, we've got Dwight Jones. He's the Senior Executive Director of Math and Science. A big round of applause for our panelists for joining us tonight. Thank you for being here. So, Charlonda, let's start with you and the amazing things you and your team are doing at the Family Resource Center. And how about Janetta Burnett? She was the lady that was featured in this story where, I don't know if you guys could hear, but her daughter passed away, and she immediately took custody of her 5 grandchildren, just overnight, having to get them to school. 4 of them are in school, 2 of them go to different schools, and she's on a fixed income. She's retired, and the services that you oversee help this woman, and you saw it brought her to tears. Talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for doing this. And one is an arm baby. He's such a sweetheart. And Miss Burnett's story is one of hundreds of stories that we have across the district. And so one of the things that when we talk about problem solving around issues that keep kids from being in school is just the immediacy of now. Parents need things, and even though we know that there are organizations that can help, if a parent needs soap, if they need laundry detergent, if they need diapers, and in many cases we have teenage girls who are starting their menstrual cycles and don't have the supplies. All those become things that we've heard from our attendance agents and other district staff that visit homes, that these are the issues, and unless they go in their pockets, and many of them do, don't get me wrong, those needs go unmet, and hence we can't solve the problem. So we immediately knew that we needed to establish a place where parents could come and not fill out a bunch of applications. We just simply verify your kid as a child in our district, and we receive you with refreshments, coffee, and treat you with dignity and respect, because that makes a difference in how you serve people, but they can come and get the resources that they need. Now, I want to acknowledge that Feed the Children, Amazon, we have a couple other partners who are helping us resource that particular spot. But just to give you an idea of how significant the need is, when we first started a couple months ago, we started with understanding that we would have parents walk in, and so we have a couple hundred parents who just come every month now, right? We also have our attendance agents and other staff who come because they're serving parents locally at their schools, or they take things directly to the house. But it would typically take us to get through 2 semis, 3 weeks to get through all those resources. This last month, it was all gone in 3 days. And so as you—
A truckload of
a semi-truck. We're not talking about a little truck. And so, that just, I wanted to give people a sense of what the need is. And some of those basic needs we just talked about are things that we have parents who walk to the center to get. And so we got to find a way to, create equity of access. So we need to have a center on the east side, because we have parents coming from all over the center in Southwest Detroit. So as people are listening and thinking about, how do I help? If you're part of a social group, or you're part of a committee or a church, or whoever's listening, and you want to do a sock drive every month, that becomes a basic need that parents need. Even though we don't have a uniform policy, we typically have a dress code in the schools, and we know that that's a huge barrier to kids going to school. So we still help with those uniform pieces. And we've said to our parents, even if they don't have a uniform, like still send them. But no parent wants to feel like my child is the child without. And so it becomes a psychological thing, and then kids still miss. And so our job is really to receive our parents well, to be listening to what the needs are, and really try to leverage our partners, the community, and many times our staff to try to help fill those gaps. But it's not enough quick enough. We had a parent come in last week, Thursday, and she has 6 children in our district, and she's doing all the right things. And she said, I'm struggling to keep them there, but I need to find a job. Can you get me a bus card? Our funding isn't structured for that, but we've anteed up and got that bus card, and Mom called us the next morning. And she was hired on the spot at Little Caesars Arena. The difference between this mother being able to be okay and keep her kids in school every day was a bus card or a bus ride, $5.
Incredible.
And so I think that one of the things that we're trying to be very sensitive to is not just asking you what is the issue, but helping you to problem solve around the issues. We also know that housing instability is a huge barrier for us, and so we've concentrated some resources in that particular center where we can at least begin to provide support. We're not solving the issue, because when the moratorium on rent was lifted, that creates a destabilizing factor in the district. So all these things that happen externally find a way to creep into the work that we're doing, and it has a significant impact, and chronic absenteeism is one of them. And so, you know, I could go on, Kimberly, but the bottom line is we do need help. We are looking for more corporate partners to help feed the children, continue to populate our centers with resources. They bring dry food goods and all those other kinds of things as well. But for us, it's about the immediacy of now. If I got to fill out an application in a motor city where we still have lots of parents with no transportation, we do some deliveries, it becomes difficult to really access services without a little bit of help. So love you doing this.
Yes,
because we need
absolutely. It's amazing, and it's kind of a one-stop shop too, that you can get all of these things. So I'll turn now to you to Effie. We came to your school, Gompers Elementary. Saw you are a busy lady. You know a lot of the kids by first name, and it's your responsibility. You have really taken this personally in that you want to know if these students are absent and why. You will go and knock on the parent's door and say, where is such and such? Why are they not in school? What are some of the challenges and things that you are hearing as to why kids are not coming to school or being late for school even?
So once again, I'd like to say thank you for helping us to spread the word to let everyone know that attendance is everybody's business, first of all. It's just not the classroom, it's everybody's business. So just a quick true story, just remembering back, my sister passed from cancer, and her children were very young. And so just remembering one day going over to the house, and it's before she actually passed, and my nephew, he was about 8 years old, and he was not doing well in school. And so he needed some assistance. Mom couldn't help because of where she was with her condition. Grandmother, which is my mother, she was watching them. So at the time, they had moved in with my mother. So it took, at that time, I was young with my family, my children were young, but he needed support. And so I was able to step in to give some of that support for him. And it really brought tears to my eyes. The last segment I did, it really brought tears to my eyes as I remembered back then, if the support was not there, what may have happened. And so that's what our family, and those are the things that we're still seeing now. We're seeing families actually needing support. Mom has a sickness. Mom can't get them to school. These are all true stories. These are all the stories I hear. Mom has lupus. I can't walk them when they miss the bus. And so on the other end of that, we want to make sure that we are giving them solutions that are practical. It's a problem-solving thing. We want to say to them, hey, when they tell us what's going on, I need to be able to offer a resource for them. And that's real important to me, because families are having real issues. And if I could say just that Gompers, period, right now is challenging, and that's with a capital C, and not just for children, not just for families, for the staff also, because we have to remember, you know, while the dust is settling from the pandemic, everybody was affected in some way or another. Everybody experienced something. And so now we're seeing what was the effect of that pandemic. We're on the other side of COVID. We still have parents, no, I'm fearful. We still wear masks, you know. I don't want my child to come because they're coughing, they're sneezing, and I don't want them to look at them funny or say this or say that, or parents saying, you know, we almost died from COVID. I'm not still sure that it's totally safe. So we need to be able to say, this is what we're still doing in the building to make sure that your child is as safe as we can make them. And so families want to know, children want to know, staff want to know that we're safe, that we're okay. And I remember DPS, when they did DPSCD, they did the campaign when we were going out, and they gave us these T-shirts saying that, are you okay? And so that's one of my first messages to families. First of all, before I say, where is this one, where is that one, I want to know, are you all okay? What's going on with the family? And then that allows them to maybe take off the defense that they may have up, to say, okay, so they are genuinely concerned about me. And it's not that some of us have not been where some of them are now, because just remembering even before I went into the workforce and I needed to supplement our income, just being real, because we asked the families to be real with us. And so my husband didn't have his dream job yet, so I started to look for a job. But I had to find a job that would allow me to still get my children to school, to still pick them up from school. And a lot of our families, they're figuring, well, I don't have that type of job. My job is not being forgiven. Before I went out, I had to see what field could I go into that would allow me to still be able to get to my children, make sure that they're in school. And so what we want to do is change the mindset. Some parents are like, I'm in survival mode. I'm not thinking about next month or next year. I'm just thinking about making it to the end of the week. How can you help me with that? And that's what I want to be able to tell them. Hey, here's a resource. This is how we can help. And I've told some of our families, we need to hear some success stories. We want to know that you have made it through those challenges, and we do have some success stories. So for Gompers, it's challenging, and we're in recovery, because even though, like I said, we're on the other side of the pandemic, we have to remember that we still have to have some forgiveness, because people are still experiencing what they're experiencing. Before COVID, there were some things going on.
Oh, sure.
Now, after COVID, things are just compounded, and they want to know. So, when I show up at their door, are you okay? How's it going? And so we're reaching out to those families to let them know that we're there.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful work you're doing now. Alicia, your department actually oversees the work of attendance agents like Effie. So talk about some additional ways your department is making attendance a real priority.
Yeah, actually, my teams deal with attendance, and we also deal with whole child support, and they go together. And so the teams focused on behavioral health and physical health. So when Dr. Beatty talked about, we have a nurse in every building. The physical health needs, we have dental partners for every school. We have vision to learn. Just the other week, there was a group of 200 students at Cody who had screenings. 120 of them needed glasses. And through our partnership, they will get glasses for free, right? So these things, when you think about anyone in the audience who wears glasses, if you think about trying to go to school without your glasses, there's reasons why you might not want to go to class. And so trying to figure out how we remove those barriers, those health barriers, mental health barriers, physical health barriers, and then thinking through, like Shalonda talked about, expanding the family resource distribution centers, pantries, shelf-stable things, uniforms, all of those things being accessible is part of what we're trying to do in terms of whole child support, because that gives attendance agents, like Effie, tools. When she said we want to give resources, if we don't have a family resource distribution center, if we don't have a partner who's giving glasses, if we don't have a dental partner who comes and does an extraction, we had a story last year of students who were actually putting toothpaste just on their gums to keep the smell of their teeth down because they needed a tooth extracted and they did not have dental services. So we connected them, you get that emergency service. But these things in the audience even, you're thinking, how can you even go to school thinking when you have a toothache like that? And not to get too graphic, I'm a former science teacher, so I'll be careful here, but when that is happening in your body, how can your mind focus on mathematics or science? And so thinking about how do we build these extra resources in the schools so that attendance agents have tools that they can then give to families, that's one. Two, the attendance agents, we do have an agent assigned to every school, and really thinking through how they're approaching the work. Dr. Vitti talked earlier about our sophisticated data systems. We're now able to, in real time, see, blank attendance, which essentially means that someone didn't take attendance. We can correct that, but then also see just immediately who's absent. This seems very basic, but I will say if you don't have that system, and I'm an old school teacher, we used to use triplicate copies and had the SM1s. You had to really do a lot of work to figure out who was absent in the building. This is all electronic in real time. And so these tools that attendance agents have at their disposal, blank attendance, average daily attendance, the information connected right to the student information system to call the home, to visit the home. Now, all of those things are in place. But I will say we still have an issue, right? So we have systems and we have support. Do we have enough support? Every school, we have the Family Resource Distribution Center on the west side. We need at least another center on the southwest side, on the east side, at least. And we're trying to move towards this concept of health hubs. So we have a plan to have 12 health hubs around the city that would have the school-based health center. On top of that would have behavioral health services, a family resource distribution center with uniforms and food distribution and family services. 12 is probably not enough either out of 107 schools, but 12 is the next step. And then you have attendance agents in each of the feeder patterns that can direct families to that more locally placed family resource distribution center. So I just lift that up because the work of the attendance agents is not just about finding who's not at school. They're also connecting people to resources. But if we don't have the support we need to provide those resources, and quite frankly, a lot of times people say the school is providing a pantry, the school is providing dental care. Yes, because if the school doesn't provide those things, it's not happening. And those are barriers that we recognize. Our commitment to whole child is about taking care of the whole child. And I would add this other thing that a lot of people leave out. We've also been trying to expand, Dr. Vitti talked about Love Challenge Prepared. We've been trying to expand the offerings at schools, pushing in on this idea of schools being joyful places. You should want to go to school. So what are we doing? And I know Dwight's going to talk in a minute, but what are we talking about in terms of curriculum and instruction? As a former middle school science teacher, I made it my business to make my class one that students didn't want to miss. That's part of the joy of going to school. And then expanding after school programs, making sure there's things that kids are excited about. So all of those things go together.
Yeah, so Dwight, why don't you tell us the effect that chronic absenteeism is having on learning, and just kind of piggyback off of what Alicia was talking about.
Thank you for that question. We know early on in elementary, chronic absenteeism sets the stage for student achievement. It sets the stage for collaboration with peers, also graduation rates. We've also found out in the data that chronic absenteeism is a better indicator of student dropout than test scores. And what happens, what Alicia was just sharing, was if you think about back in the day when we were in school and in groups, we worried about the student not doing their part of the assignment. Well, today, students have to worry about their classmates not making it to school to complete the assignment. In addition to that, it exacerbates an issue for teachers because our curriculum now is cyclical and it continues to move on. Well, if students aren't coming to school on a regular basis, then the teacher has to go back and start over again. And that makes it boring for students that are coming to school on time. So then we have to promote multi-tiered systems of support. What we're doing right now in our district is trying to move forward with a year of academic growth and proficiency, offering strong Tier 1 instruction for students. However, some of our students are receiving Tier 2 instruction, and that is only as a result because they're not coming to school. So test scores indicate that they don't know something. As the superintendent mentioned, it doesn't mean that they're illiterate. They're just not in school to get that. So we want to make certain that school is fun. We want to bring that back, but we also want to pay attention to our teachers are the burden bearers of this news before it even gets to individuals like Alicia and Shalonda in her office. Our teachers have to absorb this. So we are a secondary place in the school that have now become a primary source to be able to provide these resources, and then teaching and learning takes place. Because you can't think about math, science, literacy, and social studies if you're hungry, if your tooth is hurting. So we're trying to make certain that school is fun, and we want to do that by making certain kids are loved, challenged, and prepared, but also engaging to make students want to come to school. I remember as a child, even if I had to go to the clinic or the doctor's office with my mother, I would ask her, will we be back in time to go to school? Boy, school is almost over. I don't care. I want to get there because of the after-school program or whatever is going on. So we want to get that back and make certain that school is a place where our kids thrive. Homelessness also talks about the best place for a child to be is at school. My personal opinion, I think the best place for a child to be, whether they're homeless or not, is in school when the parents are out at work.
We'll take some audience questions here. And Alicia, I think this one might be for you, and you kind of touched on this. This one comes from Iris Taylor. She's former DPSCD board member, candidate for election. Do you believe the health hubs will help address some of the issues associated with chronic absenteeism? You've talked about that, just, you know.
I do. We know just from the One Family Resource Distribution Center, and even what Charlonda shared today, the need is even greater right now. To go through 2 semi-trucks in 3 days as opposed to 3 weeks is intense, right?
Yeah.
So I definitely think the health hubs, we know, I'll even say this, we know from the nursing visits from last year, we do have a nurse at every school. There were over 30,000 individual visits to the nurse across the district. Of those 30,000 visits, 22,000 kids were sent back to class. If the nurse had not been there, those students probably would have gone home, contributing to chronic absenteeism. So access to a nurse, whether that's through the school-based health center or at your actual school, access to a doctor through telehealth at the health hubs as we propose, additionally dental, mental, food access, et cetera, I absolutely believe it'll make a difference because we know there's a need. So if there's a need and we can address that need in a more geographically dispersed manner, I definitely think it will make a difference. The plan with 12 hubs puts a hub within 3 miles of every single Detroit student. So to make that radius smaller, you'd have to increase the hubs.
Yeah. Go ahead. What were you saying, Shalonda?
And Alicia and I collaborate all the time, and one of the things that I will say is, in addition to getting the resources, just having a systematic way in which we can get it out, creating a culture in which families feel comfortable asking for help. As you heard the one mom, I want to lift up our parent leaders who are working across all of our schools. A lot of times they are the bridge. They are sharing the information. They're creating the conditions for parents to be comfortable to come in and ask for the help. And in those relationships, what we do create is a system of support even within people that folks can access, and all to the end, because all of this is about kids, all to the end of making sure our kids are positioned to win and positioned to be in school every single day.
Absolutely. Another audience question. I asked neighborhood kids who are playing outside during school hours, why aren't you in school? A couple of answers. My mama didn't wake me up. I didn't have clean clothes. So the question is there a program in place that will encourage kids to get themselves prepared for school? Anybody want to take on that answer?
So I want to just start with parents, and I've done this work for a long time, and folks know I lead with love because, you know, our parents make all the difference in the world in kids being successful, but we got to be accountable as well. We have to be as relentless as our parents was and our grandparents were, that even if you were sick, you were still expected to go to school. And so yeah, we need kids to be self-motivated. That happens more at the high school level. When we looked at some of these numbers, and Alicia talked about the data, some of the biggest challenges we've had, it was around the kindergarten, first and second grade level. And that is not a child getting themselves to school. That's our parents owning that and prioritizing getting our kids support to school. And so we're here to support you. But we also need to have a reset in our community because we can do better. And we have to, and it was everybody's business. When you talked about earlier, Kim, you talked about, I see kids, should I say something?
Yeah.
Yes, you should say something, because at least minimally it brings a consciousness, but taking it a step forward, because oftentimes you have parents who are working 1 or 2 or 3 jobs in some cases, and they don't know. And so there are roles that all of us can play, but I do think that we can't abdicate the responsibility of kids getting to school to children. We have to own that both as parents, but also as community members, because it is about all of our kids, not just if your kids are going to school, because their fates are intertwined, but all of our children need to be there. And this is our watch. Everybody that's over 18 in this room, this is our watch, and we have to decide we're going to change this thing.
Yeah, we as a community, whether you have
That's
children
right.
or not. What were we going to say?
Can I also speak to that really quickly? So while the parents are getting themselves together, and it is their responsibility, and they should be held accountable. So what I tell the students, they say, I say, hey, you have a cell phone? Because if they say, I say, help mommy and daddy out. I say, if you got a cell phone, you can share that number. Mrs. Harris will actually call you and get you up, or set your alarm to get up. Because I encourage them. Parents go through things, and sometimes it might be that child that will cause them to get in their place. You never know. You just never know. So my solution to them in the meantime is that you set your alarm or share your number with me. And I've called parents, I'll be your alarm clock while you get it together. Don't mean for it to be a crutch, but while you're getting it together, this is how I want to step in and help.
A big round of applause for our panel. What a great discussion. Great. As we wrap things up here, this was a really quick, this hour just flew by. But I would like to go ahead and thank Dr. Vitti and his team for the opportunity to discuss this issue of chronic absenteeism. We also want to thank the team here at DPSCD's Mumford High School for, a beautiful facility. So we appreciate you having us here. And our audience members for all of your questions. There were a lot of them that we didn't get to, but I'll make sure that our panel does hear your concerns. And then on behalf of myself and Local 4, we just thank you all for coming. Thank you for watching. And we will see you hopefully tonight on Local 4 News at 11. Have a great night.